Hey, hey, hey! And we're live again for another episode of HR Shouts and Whispers. We are now at episode number 25, and we are here to talk about effective crisis leadership. Sobrang importante nito ngayon, guys. Super, super duper important. That's why very timely na ito yung topic natin for today. Pero syempre, introduce ko muna yung guest, si host natin. Hi, Chris!
Hi, Ken. Good evening. Okay, anyway, we're having a productive Good Friday, okay, because we've
Mga pa.
invited Miss Janet Yung.
Hi,
Okay,
Janet!
yeah,
Hi.
hi, Janet. Yes, she's an author, speaker, and consultant, and she is the founder of Trilogy People Performance Consultancy in Singapore. So she has 3 decades of corporate and business experience, and she is a Standards of Leadership awardee and is known for her thought leadership and bringing clarity to personal and organizational growth, and then leadership and engagement through her customized training and consultation. So, without further ado, okay, Janet, hi. How was your
Hi.
week?
My week was busy as I had to do quite a lot of interviews like you guys, interviewing different leaders across Asia, from Pakistan to New Zealand to Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines, to understand how they are dealing with crisis and hopefully to share their experiences to help others as well.
Yes. And we've also invited, okay, the admins of HR Shouts and Whispers. Okay, we have Pai Conde. She's one of the panelists tonight. And Joy Alusbanos. Hi,
Good evening,
Joy.
guys.
Okay. So
Hi,
her
Janet.
yes. Joy is just on audio, okay. And then
Yeah.
some of the viewers, you can ask questions, okay, because I think it's very timely that we talk about leadership because when we were like managing our crisis, okay, so that was like maybe, well, we still are, but when we decided some businesses were forced to do work from home arrangements and transfer to work from home mode. Uh, and also tried to make sense of what's happening with COVID season. So I guess people were like really panicking and then we're facing some uncertainties. Okay, so we decided to have this topic for our podcast because we have Janet here and we'll ask some questions about leadership. Okay, so Janet, we'll start the ball rolling. So we have leadership. We've always been, saying that a company or an organization needs a good leader. But what is leadership exactly? How would you define it?
Yeah, so when I was writing the book on leadership, there were so many definitions about leadership. Different people will give different kinds of leadership. I think at the end of the day, so long as you are able to influence someone, it is leadership. So long as you have followers, it is leadership, whether it's in an organization, at home. And when there's another very hot topic at the moment, it's especially during this time, you have lots of emotions going on, you have different kinds of thoughts, fear and anxiety. How do you then lead yourself? So that's another topic. It's called self-leadership. So to me, I think everybody can be a leader. It's just different circumstances. When do you step up and what do you do about it?
Well, like for companies, okay, that have like several levels of leadership, okay, like we have like the president, the owner, and then you have the line managers, okay. So are there different styles of leadership and what is an effective style of leadership when during these situations?
Right. When one of the key things that we were looking at from the leadership, I was trying to understand a leader, how do they develop their leadership style? Why do different leaders have different kinds of leadership style? After interviewing more than 90 leaders across 17 countries and almost 50 industries, so what we found and we developed a framework was a leader can be influenced by two parts. One is what we call the personality. The other one is what we call the character. Maybe what I would do is, let me share with you my screen.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to look at this particular screen itself, so when we looked at a leader, there are actually two parts of it that we can look at. Leader is influenced by their personality. So from personality, it's basically inborn. So a person, this is a study for many, many years by the Big Five theory, the MBTI, Urban Brain Dominance, as to how is a person born, how do they react in different ways. So that's one part of looking at personality that's intrinsic. Now you have, for example, the vocal world right now, because of all the things that's happening, we have to develop skills of resilience, ability, agility, and empathy. So that's the nurtured part of the personality. Now, if you were, one of the questions that you asked me earlier on was, what's the difference between then the Western style of leadership and the Asian style? I wanted to understand the values actually based on an individual leader, because values are the foundation of why we do things the way we do. And it's developed because of the way we are brought up. It's also influenced by our family values, influenced by our society, our education background, and whether the particular leader has gone through hardship in the younger days, or they had to overcome different kinds of mental stress, as
Mm-hmm.
well as whether they are gurus and mentors guiding them. So this part then forms the biggest values in terms of influencing how a leader will react, whether they are actually at the top leader rung, at the
Mm-hmm.
line manager, or whichever, or even at home, how you deal with people, because these two sides actually affects their behavior, therefore affecting their leadership style, as well as the decisions and how they will actually act and communicate with people. So that's how I actually will look at leadership.
Mm-hmm. But in terms of like culture between, because we've been asking about, and we're just very curious about your answer, is there a marked difference between a Western style and an Asian style?
So when we look at actually values and in terms of integrity, this came out as the top three values in the discussion with a lot of the leaders. Integrity in the Western part of the world means whether are you following a particular guideline, are you compliant to systems and processes. But if you were to look at actually the Asian leaders, integrity is different, right? Because we attach the face value to it. And what does that mean? It means to the leader, delivering whatever they say and whatever they do is critical. So yes, the word is integrity. Simple definition is the same, but how it is delivered out, how the
How
leader
it
will actually interpret and carry out what they do is totally different. Then the next thing we looked at is leading by example. Leading by example in the Western context and the Asian context is also totally different. We had this discussion about micro and macro management.
mm-hmm.
The Western context, leading by example, means if the leader takes a decision, he will work together with the team to do it. But in the Asian context, especially if it's a family-run business, it becomes then the leader actually doing the things and showing the
Yes.
example of what it should be done,
Mm-hmm.
but may not necessarily know how to let go. But at the end of the day, it depends on the team members whether they feel it's something that they want to follow as well, right? Then the
Mm-hmm.
last one is actually the key difference between an Asian leader and a Western leader. Human connection. Human connection, because you need to understand and basically be able to communicate at a level that your employees understand you so that you can have better engagement. Now, if you look at the different cultures, whether it's in Philippines, in Indonesia, these are all different islands. I interviewed one leader from Indonesia. He says he may be from the main island of Java, but if he goes to a totally different island, the culture will be different, the hand gestures will be different, the way you will connect and motivate an employee will be totally different. So if you want to connect with them, it'll be different. But if you look at actually the Western style, their background is different. They will never really understand where their staff is coming from unless you really basically understand their culture, understand their background to really connect with them. So that's one of the key things I find when I actually discuss with a lot of the leaders when they share with me. This is a key difference.
Mhm. So that's interesting because that is also one of the things that we have some obstacles, okay? Because like it's also like with generations, okay? Because like I'm a Gen Xer, I will have or I actually have difficulty understanding millennial culture. So that can also be one of the things that can explain human connection.
Correct. So it's the same thing, right? Because if you look at an individual or a leader, they have their intrinsic personality and their nurtured skills. But the way we are brought up, the Gen X's, I'm also a Gen X, right? And the way we bring out our child, it's totally different. At our time, job security, career development is very important because we need to provide for our family. But our children, most of them grew up in pretty comfortable environment, the millennials. So therefore, what motivates them is how can they grow and how fast can they grow because things they get gratified very easily. They grow up in an environment where whatever they want, they can search on Google, whatever they want, they can search on YouTube. So they may not have that kind of patience to wait. Then if you look at Gen Z, they grow up in an environment where the earth is basically getting sick.
Mm-hmm.
So they will be the generation that will suffer. So therefore, they are driven totally differently. They will not be driven by money because they feel that money is the culprit of all that's happening. So it's
Yes.
purpose. So if we do not understand, it's the same, right? To me, whether is it multi-generation, multicultural, it's because we do not understand where the other person is coming from. That's the reason why there's conflict. That's the reason why there is a difference. So of course we can look at personality differences and different approaches. Some can be more analytical, some can be more process or action oriented that can cause conflict. But the other one is actually really the culture bit.
Okay. So, well, let's go to your book. Okay. So, you
Yeah, sure.
interviewed 100 plus leaders. Okay. So,
Yes.
what are traits that are common among those leaders?
So here we basically ask what would be the key characteristics actually of a leader, an effective leader in Asia moving forward. So the biggest thing that came out, if you see on the word cloud, there was actually integrity.
Mm-hmm.
So this is still critical to a lot of leaders, especially when they are expanding overseas, and especially when they are looking at whether their team members can trust them to carry out things. So to the Asian leader, this integrity generally means whatever that I say I deliver. Therefore, whatever that I say, my team will work with me, and my customers will believe in me. So that's integrity. To them, that's still very important. The other part that I see that is quite crucial, that's coming out a lot, is the passion. So being passionate moving forward is critical because the world is changing, technology is changing. So I was interviewing a business owner in Malaysia who owns a security business. So I asked her, how is the COVID-19 crisis impacting her? So she said it's tough because her clients are generally the hotels as well as the offices. So her revenue has dropped because it's locked down in Malaysia as well, right? So, but because she has 500 people, so she really need to take care of them because these are the security guards down at the front. So for her, making sure that they are okay, that's the integrity part. the commitment part, the values part of her. But because she's so passionate about the business, she has already worked 5 years ahead. So at this point in time, she was telling me that by mid-April, she will be basically launching a mobile security product that basically will expand her product line even during this crisis. Now, if she's not passionate about her business, she would not have done that and look 5 years or 10 years ahead. That's the second thing. The third one that you are seeing is actually open-minded and visionary is coming very close together. It's with so much changes, crisis is happening, technology is changing every 3 to 5 years. If you don't have an open mind, you will not be able to move forward. The leader will never have all the answers. You need actually to work with everyone to basically move yourself. And there are many who talked about reverse mentoring, where the younger folks are actually mentoring the older ones on how to move forward. So I think if as a leader you have the open mind, or even as an individual, if you have an open mind and you continuously learn, then these to me will be the three key things to do well in the future. This was asked to the successful leaders. So then I asked the emerging and potential leaders, what do they feel and who do they want to work for? So the emerging and potential leaders, it's quite similar. It's also integrity. It's also leading by example, but human connection is quite crucial.
So how about like, I guess you've also, I saw your YouTube channel, you were also able to interview Filipino leaders, okay?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
what's common among Filipino leaders?
I think it's still integrity. Let me just move to the slide. These were some of the leaders that we interviewed, 7 from Philippines. Of these, I think these two, Mr. Samuel Poe and Ms. John Sapolsky, they are from the family business. So I think to them, leading by example, integrity and values of the company are quite critical. Just now you saw me put up a quote, but I will just mention it here. That's actually the company statement quote from Mr. John Sapolsky, who is the pioneer adhesive generation business owner. So one of his company value statements was malasakit, which I think you all know better than me. It's really about individual values, about being a family. So to him, if the entire organization is working like a family, then it will basically move the company forward towards a common goal. So then this is Mr. Samuel Poe. He started off as a distributor of Taiwanese baby diapers, Pampers. So then now he has his own R&D in their own brand. I think he's the leader of the Philippines Pampers brand. That's what they told me. So he says one of the key things is how do I translate down the culture that I believe in terms of integrity, working hard and commitment, as well as the values of my integrity value to my employees. So because they have grown so big, so this is something that they are also working on right now. So these two leaders are already telling me is integrity and values. Now these two, this is my ex-boss from J&J, Johnson & Johnson. So he is Mr. Benjamin Avancina, and this is Johnson & Johnson. He's still within Johnson & Johnson. I joined Johnson & Johnson because of the credo values. So the number one is to the patients, the doctors, and then to the employees, then to the community before the stakeholders. So it's the same values. It's also about integrity. It's also about people, right? And Mr. Joaquim Quintos, he's actually from IBM previously. Right now, he's the Senior VP, First Philippines Holdings Corporation. So same thing. I think he talked about integrity. He talked about work commitment because he said that his grandfather was one of the first who had to develop actually a vaccine for a disease in Philippines previously. And his father was one of the first 5 engineers that was sent to, I think, I can't remember the island's name, but to set up electrical plants. So they had to lead by example. They had to work hard in order to move forward. So then we have Mr. Manuel Avancina, who runs a SME, Tender Bites. So he's an MBA, but he has to work with basically his employees are none of them are highly educated. So I say, how do you actually communicate and ensure that everybody is the same? So same thing. He also brought up integrity. He also brought up actually the values of how you treat people are quite critical. And then you have Mr. Jonathan, who's actually more to management consultancy services. So he's into entrepreneurship and helping the younger people within Philippines, because work may be difficult to get through. So starting your own business is easy. How do you have an entrepreneurial mindset? But delivering on what he says and what he teaches and helping them is also important. So it's integrity again. So to me, actually, all seven of them has integrity, and then the human connection values within.
Okay. Now, anyway, our panelists
Just
are here.
yeah, Janet, as someone who has in-depth knowledge about leadership like yourself, um, which type of leader do you think is more effective? An autocratic leader or a democratic leader? I mean, considering that both have the same traits that you mentioned, like integrity, passion, and open-mindedness, which would you think would be more effective?
I think it depends on the industry, as well as the time, as well as the stage of the company. I wouldn't say that an autocratic leadership style would be useful in all situations. But if you have an autocratic leader who is able to lead well, who is able to connect and reward his people well, during times of crisis, he is still able to delegate down and let his team members make the decisions, he will still be an effective leader. If you're looking at an autocratic leader in a IT fast-paced changing environment, or industry like in IT software, in technology, AI, it can be then a misfit. So I think it depends. I wouldn't say it's a one size fit all. And an individual, I think from a personality perspective, from what I've been doing as well, if you are usually more action oriented, okay, and you want to do things, it's tough to let go. It doesn't mean you cannot develop, but it's tough to let go. So you have autocraticness to your leadership style. But if you're someone who's more analytical and you don't really like to be hands-on, so unlikely you'll be autocratic. So that's what I feel in terms of leadership. But if, for example, you look at how the COVID-19 situation is being handled in different countries, when you have too democratic a style, nobody can make a decision. 3 days and 7 days, the infection rate and the death rate significantly different. In a country where basically a decision comes from the center and things go, it's really fast. So it's a matter of days, and it really makes a lot of difference. So I feel that at different times of the company growth stage, at the different industry level, different kind of leadership style. But I think self-awareness, the leader's self-awareness is critical. If you know you have a tendency to be autocratic, you need to manage how you handle your leadership style at the right time. If it's time to be participative, to be more democratic, and feedback is that, then you need to manage that. But it's not possible to change from an autocratic leader to a suddenly very democratic leader, because you can't really change your internal traits. That's what I feel.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? How about Joy?
Hello, good
Okay.
evening, Janet.
Hi, good evening.
What would you advise for someone who has not really been a manager per se? Suddenly he became a manager, and it's not really, he's not that really trained in the beginning. How would you, what would be your advice?
In terms of motivating people, in terms of self-development, in what areas are you looking at?
Mm.
Yes, yes.
Maybe like if it's a first-time manager, what would be the first things that that person should do to improve oneself?
Yeah, I think when you are a first-time leader, you have a tendency to be what we call more hands-on because you're so good. If you're a excellent salesperson, for example, excellent operations person, when you're promoted and you become a manager, it's a totally different skill set. One is a technical skill set, the other one is actually a people skill set. So the first thing you need to do is actually to really understand what makes people tick, how to motivate people, because you're no longer trying to do things yourself. I still remember reading the book about Clem Blanchard, who said that if you are someone who doesn't develop yourself, then you have more monkeys jumping on your back because everything you have to do it yourself. So, so I think that would be the first thing, is to really understand your role, that your role is a people's role and no longer a skills role, that you should also learn that not everyone will be the same like you. They may not necessarily be able to perform tasks as well as you. And your role is not to do it for them. Your role is to guide them so that they can be better and they will basically improve over time. So these, if they have this awareness, then I think it's quite easy. They will be probably going for courses and picking up skills. That's two. And the third one is, I think the human connection portion is really important. In order for you to understand what makes the person tick, it's really to talk to them, to work with them, and to be able to motivate and engage them.
In your experience, Janet, were you able to discern, okay, like if like a person is an introvert and an extrovert, which makes a better leader?
I think whether you are introvert or extrovert, so long as you can connect with people and you can influence the person to follow and achieve common goals, you'll be an effective leader. It doesn't really matter.
Mhm. Because I think that's one of the pitfalls of a first time manager. Okay. Sometimes, like, for example, if you're in the IT industry, more people are an introvert. Okay. So uh, they would say that I will not accept being promoted because I don't like talking to people because I'm too shy. I think I've encountered that because my industry is BPO and IT, and there are a lot of young people who would decline a promotion because they don't like to talk to people.
Yeah, so that's also actually part of the motivation. If a person is more analytical and they are not so people oriented, so I think the different personalities, the Asian personality that I studied, I have been practicing for the last 15 years. What I found was if a person is more analytical, then usually because they what they want to analyze is more of the facts and figures. They really don't want to analyze people that much. So they will find a chore to then have to motivate and manage leaders, manage other people. So for them, it's quite natural if they reject promotion unless they go through a experience or a cycle and they are motivated and they want to climb the corporate ladder. I think that's one of the key things I think the Gen X have with probably the younger generation, because the younger generation, not all of them wants to be promoted. They want to do things that they enjoy doing. They no longer associate the title in terms of a manager to be necessarily higher than an individual contributor.
Yes, because for us, okay, the usual framework is going up to be
Yes,
successful. Yes,
yes.
but to them, I mean, it's more of like a sideways thing.
Correct.
Yes.
So for example, this leader here, Mr. Joaquin Quantos, I was asking him. So he was brought in to do renewable energy for the company, and the renewable energy had to employ a lot of young people. So he says instead of actually motivating them by promoting them, he basically chose projects and find out from these younger generation as to which project are they more passionate about. And he pulls across departments to do a multitask. Of course, it costs a huge headache, he told me, for the HR department because it's difficult to track.
Okay.
but he says that's the most effective way of motivating the younger generation who may not necessarily attach importance to promotion and titles.
Okay. So we'll just ask the questions that are being posted by our
Sure.
viewers, okay? So because we are all in work from home mode, okay? So this is from our friend Ryan Apostol. So what are the so let me see. What are the matrices that can be implemented and how to score them while most of the workers are on work from home mode? So how would you now uh, rate performance?
Right. So I came from a sales background. We don't go into the office. I have a team. Well, I have teams basically moving all around. I don't know where they are. So usually we manage by what we call KPIs. For me, I think so long as the team member or my team delivers on what they committed to, how they deliver it, when, of course, the when is important because we'll decide on the timeline, but how they deliver it, how they allocate it, I usually do not question too much because different people have different work styles.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, at my point in time at that time was the clients of my team members will also have different time commitments and work styles. So it will be difficult for me to specify, you have to come into the office, you must finish this, you must finish that. I say, okay, the goal is if you tell me you're going to meet them 5 times in this month and you're going to, by the end of the 5th meeting, deliver this result or at least achieve a progress towards it, then I'm fine with it. So if you're looking at matrix, that's how I will use it. It's more based on both working out what are the KPIs, what do you agree on, and did you actually finish the task by the end of the month or by the end of the week, depending on how comfortable you are with the timelines.
Yeah, so there will be a lot of focus on KPIs, okay? So
Yeah.
KPIs need to be defined now. For example, like our BPO, we actually migrated everything to work from home status. So it's a back office. So we just have to define, okay, like for example, 0 mistakes, okay, and then attention to clients, okay, like you can basically whatever the clients are requesting for the day, when you should be able to do it, okay, and accomplish it within the day. And then the next day it should be another set of clients that you would be attending to. So just define the KPIs. Okay, so how about, okay, so there's another question. So at this time, okay, so we've talked about different personality styles, different leadership styles. So how would you now rate an effective leader?
Mm. I think effective leadership, if you are looking at from a team perspective, would be, to me, if the leader is able to influence the team members to achieve common goals or progress towards a common goal, that would be effective leadership.
Okay, and a follow-up question is micromanaging an effective leadership style?
I think there was this we when we were going through training, we call it situational leadership. So you may have heard about situational
Mm-hmm.
leadership as well. So similar to whether we are talking about autocratic or democratic leadership style, if you have a brand new staff who does not know anything and needs to be handheld because they just came into the company, they are new to sales, then a micromanaging style, it's important because you need to guide them. But if a person is already very experienced in whatever that they do, then a micromanaging style may not necessarily work. But we're talking about situations, because even if the person is very experienced in doing task A, when it is new task in terms of task B, for example, maybe digital marketing for someone when I was new.
Janet, because there are people who are really effective when you give them instructions, and there are people who are highly effective when you leave them on their own.
Yes, yes, definitely. Remember, I spoke about an effective leader is someone who's able to get the team members to achieve common goals. But everyone has different approach in achieving that common goal. So the question is not how you do it, but whether you achieve it. So some would, and what some would prefer, basically, that you leave me alone so long as I achieve my goal. Just like now, work from home, KPIs, you let me go. Some will be new. Yes, you need to handhold me. So an effective leader will then understand through the human connection and basically speaking with them to know generally whether they should be hand holding, should they be micromanaging, or should they basically delegate down and let the person do it themselves?
It's also dependent on the job, because if it's like a sales job, it, you know, people are, you know, you don't really require a lot of you know, hand holding, maybe on the first few months, okay.
Correct.
But then, you know, to close a client, you can basically leave like field sales alone, and then they'll come back with, you know, if they've closed a sale or not. But if, like, for example, HR, and then you have the most detail oriented facet of HR, which is compensation. So I think
Yes.
it really depends on, you know, the job. Okay. Now, we'll ask another question. Okay. So, how about now that leaders are facing a lot of stress, Janet? How can you achieve, because like to be able to lead, you have to be balanced and then sort of like, you know, together and grounded. But how can you achieve clarity if you're stressed?
Not easy, not easy. But I think what happens is accepting that the situation is stressful.
Mhm.
It's one way. I think there were quite a lot of talks about being mindful and understanding what goes through your mind in terms of thoughts. That's also pretty important. So before you can even seek clarity, I think your mind has to be calm. So that one thing would be that, of course, there will be negative thoughts. Of course, there will be anxiety thoughts, but understanding that and not dwelling in it is important. Because once you know that, even if I'm frightened and I'm uncertain, but if I have no control of the events, there's one person I interviewed, I really like how she phrased it into an equation. Events, which is E, it's not within our control. Plus R, which is our response, I think that's part of NLP if I'm not wrong, equals to outcome, which is O. Now we cannot control the event, but we can control our response. But if we are not calm, then we cannot control our response well. So before you can even have clarity, I think the calming down of your thoughts, the knowing that even if you do not know what's going to happen is better than sitting there like within ducks. That's one. Two is to have clarity of the situation. I think you cannot do it alone. Engaging and over communication and over engagement with your team members, your customers, and the stakeholders are critical, because then it gives you clarity of the situation, and then therefore you are actually able to make the right kind of decisions and be clear in your direction so that everyone can achieve the common goals and what needs to be done. That's the third step. The fourth one would be the clarity of what is coming back to you after you do the implementation. So again, communication and engagement will allow you clarity of the situation after you implement your plan, whether it's effective, do you need to adjust, do you need to realign your strategies to move forward.
Mhm. Okay, here's a question from, I think this is from Marjorie. In a non-stock, not-for-profit NGO, how would a first-time young leader motivate demotivated people without resorting to monetary rewards?
I think not everyone is motivated by money. I think all of you here on this platform is here every single night because you're motivated in terms of being able to contribute back to society. For an NGO, the person will have joined the NGO maybe because they feel for the cause. So understanding why this person joined this organization right at the beginning is important, because then you are able to draw similarities. Because how do you actually influence someone? You need to have a common ground. You need to show empathy and you need to understand where the other person is coming from. So by doing that and then understanding their family, their background, then you don't necessarily need money. It's actually sometimes, a lot of times, right? I think all of you do these voluntarily. There's a lot of coordination that needs to be done. You don't pay people to do it. How do you actually get so many people to collaborate with you? Because you have a common cause and you have a common goal. So for an NGO, I think it's even easier in that sense. When you are in a commercial environment, sometimes it can be challenging because people may be motivated by money instead, and there's no money at the moment right now.
Well, when I first promoted, what I stopped doing was I stopped talking about problems or complaining about the company myself. Okay, because as a leader, I think that what you say, okay, would have a bearing on when people hear you. Okay, so that I sometimes manage what I say. Okay, so I don't really complain, or I stop whining. So that's one of my techniques. Okay, because like as a first time leader, you might get so overwhelmed that you are not conscious of what's coming out from you. Okay, so stop talking about the problem and then maybe focus on solutions. Okay, so make meetings more productive, and make the meeting shorter. That's what I did.
Yeah, can I add to
Yeah.
this, to the question of Marjorie? Hi, Marjorie. Probably my take on this would be non-monetary rewards, right? Um, Awards would do. It's non-monetary. Uh, you could focus on acknowledgement too. I mean, or assigning roles to them. Um, some people are motivated with the challenge of it, but as I do see with your situation, if they've been there longer than you, uh, probably they lack the acknowledgement. Every situation differs, so I don't know all the information, but basing it on human behavior, a lot of people lack the acknowledgement. So probably if you could make them feel acknowledged, they could feel better working with you. And once that's set, probably it's easier to communicate with them now. Well, that's how I see it. So I'll start with acknowledgement first.
Yeah,
Acknowledgement of
maybe.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can like also ask Spike. Okay, so the first time that you were promoted as a manager or a supervisor, how did you, get to make people believe that you were worthy of becoming their manager or supervisor?
Well, first is, well, at the back of my mind, I wanted everybody to like me. But as days went by, I figured that it won't work. I mean, being a leader, it's your job is not to be liked, but generally it's to ensure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. And of course, there will be times where it'll cross your mind is fear. A good motivator is acknowledgement, something that would help them want to do their job even more, and what their goals are. Are they there for the money, or are they there for continuous employment, or are are their goals at par with the goals of the company as well? I mean, do they intend to stay for long and grow with the company, or are they just gaining experience so that they can step up somewhere else? So, I mean, there are things that there are a lot of things that go on, and perhaps, well, for me, the first thing that I did was to ask everybody what the ongoing issues are. I mean, what's working, what's not, and compare it to what I can do to resolve it within my power, or if it's something that I need to escalate to my managers also. So, yeah, so to answer that, I started with asking everybody what their concerns are.
Yeah. So that's acknowledgement. Okay. So talking to them and making them feel, okay, that their opinion counts.
Maybe I can also share something on my own. When I first became a manager, I think one of the critical things that I did wrongly was I tend to say we do it this way, and this is the best and most effective way. So, and in the end, I think it created a lot of friction between my team member and me. So that's one of the key things as a new leader. It's actually to hold back and not say too much, and just observe the situation. And if your staff or your team member prefers to do something some way, instead of saying no, you should do it this way, is ask them why did they do it this way. Maybe you'll learn something from them, and that's when you can actually acknowledge them, and that's how you can encourage them as well.
Yes. I became a supervisor during the most difficult time in my past company. And this is where values come in. Okay. It really depends on the values of the supervisor or the manager. But just to give you a hint, okay, sometimes, and it's a practice that I even do up to now. Okay, so I usually budget a portion of my salary, because if the organization will not give rewards, I will actually give a reward to my staff. Okay, but the gifts, okay, or the tokens are come out from my own salary, so it's not monetary, it's acknowledgement. And then I just like, for example, I see that they're demotivated. So I would like, okay, so you keep on making mistakes. So why don't we do it this way? Okay, let's see if you can do a payroll, a payroll without any mistakes, and let's see. Okay, maybe I'll give you something like maybe a free. It's actually a free. Uh, Trip to the parlor or whatever. It comes out from my salary. Maybe something that you can do, okay? But it really depends on the manager or supervisor if you're open to do that. Okay, so do we have questions, Ken? Do we have questions from viewers? I think we have from
Yes, we have one from Sistine. Hi, I would like to consult how to impose or create change in terms of policies or procedures in an organization whose employees were observed as resistant to change. Thank you.
Actually, you don't impose, okay? It's a careful process of persuasion.
Yes. And to understand in the first place, why are they resistant to change? Maybe they have the wrong perception. If they have the wrong perception, then it's not difficult to basically guide them towards the reason why there should be a change.
So, and also the change, it really depends, okay? Um, during this time, this, COVID season, okay, proved a lot, okay, that we can, our business, okay, at first we were saying that we couldn't do work from home. And then because we were instructed by the government to do it work from home because of the total lockdown in Luzon area. So we actually did it overnight. Okay, so this is one of the examples that but when we were convincing or persuading our managers, it was like 2 months in the making. We started telling them the situation and then how dangerous and the precautions that we need to take so that people will not uh, will not get COVID. So it was a slow process also of acceptance. And then when the announcement came, because everyone had, been told of the dangers and then the consequences, and even like transmitting it to their loved ones, we were able to do it almost overnight.
Situation force change.
Yes. So that's how you create, or you do not really impose change. It's also from management. You have to give them the facts and then tell people why you are reaching or you have reached this decision. So you have to give people the respect also.
Yeah. The other thing that I think when what I learned previously was when our management wanted to change, or even in Singapore, I think the Singapore government is famous for doing this. It's before they create a change and impose a change, they gather opinions so that they soften the impact. Because the more you talk about it, the more over a period of time you gradually you accept that there needs to be change. And in the process, they were pretty smart. They gave case studies as to why if you don't have this particular change, and they ask you the question, what will happen if you don't take the change? So you have to answer the case study, and therefore you realize that it's necessary to change.
Yeah, I think that's like also how it's done in large organizations. They're more systematic. They would have like a survey, and then the more people think they're voicing their opinions, but in the process, they're being convinced of like the measure
Yes,
to take.
yes,
And for me, imposing is quite tyrannical. I mean, at least to me. Um, if there's a new directive, what you can do is to sell the idea or to understand the rationale behind it. Yeah, same as what Christina says. Why the company has come to that decision, and uh, and I'm sure a lot will understand. And of course, you also have to be open to the concerns of the people about that new directive, and you should be ready to address whatever concern that they have. That's it.
Okay. Okay. So um the setbacks, okay. So let's talk about, okay, recovering from setbacks. So how can a good leader, okay, create like the path for recovery, Janet? Like how can companies now recover from COVID?
I think before you can recover, the first is actually reflection as to an examination, evaluation of the existing situation. Because if you do not reflect and evaluate the current situation and how your response has been thus far, then you cannot create the right kind of processes to what we call at least crisis proof. You may not totally be able to crisis proof yourself, but at least the SOPs are set in place. And even for an individual, I think it's the same whether you're talking about a leader or an organization. It's just the amount of coordination in an organization is bigger as a leader when you take a certain step. And or I think there are a lot of solopreneurs, freelancers now who are wondering, how am I going to move forward from this COVID-19? It's the ability to reflect and then prepare yourself and not be resistant to change. So everything has gone online. Like you said, It's the same for my clients. I've been telling them from a teaching perspective. I have clients who are in the enrichment and tuition. I say, I think it's time to go online because AI, technology, I spoke about it for 2 years, and COVID came and everything went online, because before that, all the excuses came, right? So, but for companies who actually saw these before that, they are actually much better prepared. I have even interviewed one leader who said that because they are all about transformation and change, and they were preparing for everything to go online before COVID-19 hit. So their client, who was supplying actually all the medical equipment that is critical right now, had to all of a sudden ramp up a lot of their production. So for them to be able to do that, they actually have to basically transform the entire leadership team level by level. And they were able to do it because the technology were in place, the processes were in place, the programs were in place. So right now, during the lockdown period, I think it is the best time to reflect on what can be done better and try and look into the future as to how your customers would have changed, how the market would have changed, and what do you need to do with your team in order to tap on the opportunities that will come later.
Yeah, that's true, because like things have slowed down, so
Yes.
you will just have the time to reflect or maybe reevaluate if it's the right, strategy, even open up a new channel for business.
Yes.
So there, you should take advantage of the slowing down.
Yes, it's the best time. This is what I do, and that's why I'm in the leadership during crisis program, because for the last 15 years, what I do, I have seasonal periods. So during this period, it's just nice.
Mhm.
That's where I do a lot of my learning. That's how I do my books. That's where I learn the most. So take this period, and the key thing is you cannot control what cannot be controlled, but you can control how you learn, what you learn, how you plan, what are the next steps you take. So this is the best time to do it.
Yeah, so that's what we did. Okay, we just manage what we can manage. Okay, things that you cannot
Yeah, correct.
control. Yeah.
There's nothing much you can do about it.
That's Spike.
Oh yeah. Well, I was just supposed to say that why worry if it can be fixed? Why worry? And if it cannot be fixed, worrying is useless.
Yes.
So, Janet, we're always like in HR, we're always talking about these big words, okay? Employee engagement. So, what is employee engagement, okay, as a leadership consultant, okay? How can you define that?
Engagement. Yeah, you're right. It's a new word. I was out for some time. Then when I came back, then I realized this was a very, very popular word. To me, actually, engagement is just whether your staff or your team members are motivated to work towards the company's goals, and when would they actually do that. In a very, very simple sense, it's actually just motivation. If I am motivated, if I'm an employee and I'm motivated to reach the company's goals, because while I'm reaching the company's goals, I achieve my own personal goals of whether is it personal development and all those, of course I'll be totally engaged. Or it is a cause that is close to my heart and I am put in charge of it, to drive it, and to have my say in it, I will be totally engaged to do it. So it's actually down to whether are you motivated to achieve certain things. That's what I think.
Yes. Mhm. So, anyway, Ken, do we have more questions?
Yeah, no questions yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, anyway, Janet, okay, so what's next for you? So, you've created 4 books. Your latest is the Effective
Effective
Asian
Asian
Leadership. Yes.
leadership. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Today and
And then
tomorrow.
what's next for you?
Right now, I think I alluded to it. I've been interviewing leaders across Asia. I have not counted how many countries yet, but more than 25, to basically understand what they're doing right now in terms of facing this COVID-19, and getting from them tips and tricks on helping either individuals or organizations in terms of dealing with this particular crisis. So we are hoping to be able to finish the editing of the videos by end of April. Leadership During Crisis Summit series. We are hoping to basically share the stories by the end of April, and we are looking at a few categories. Today, I just sent out a poll. So if you are free, you can actually also poll as to whether would you like the first episode to be on overcoming a personal crisis, whether it's emotional, business or financial, or from a business leadership perspective and a communication perspective.
How would you now define effective crisis leadership?
I think if we look at leadership or if we look at life, right, crises happen all the time. And there was this leader, Avi Leran, that I interviewed, and I really, really liked his phrase. He said, our experience, our setbacks, our obstacles refine us. So if
That's
we
so
use,
beautiful.
yeah, so if we look at it more, not necessarily from a setback perspective, but more from how they will refine us because we reflect and improve and refine our skills as leaders, then we will become more and more effective in handling crisis. We will have the right kind of processes. We may not necessarily be able to totally crisis proof, but at least we have the right steps to move forward.
Yes, it's not necessarily having all the solutions, okay?
Yes.
It's being able to, well, influence people to move forward, and it's also having the vision to move forward. Anyway, so this has been a productive evening once again. Okay, so Janet, thank you
you.
for guesting
Thank you
in
for
our
inviting me.
podcast. Janet, if how can our viewers connect with you?
They can connect with me on Facebook or LinkedIn under my name, Janet Young. Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, Ken, no more questions.
Marjorie said, thanks for answering my question. I really learned a lot. Thank you, guys.
You're most welcome.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Welcome, Marjorie. So anyway, what we can do is we can wrap up the session. Okay. So and then if they have more questions, they can post it on the comment. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're watching this on replay, yeah, do feel free to comment in so that we'd be still glad to answer your question through a Facebook comment. Yeah.
Yeah.